Now, so when we talk about like playing around with the elasticity, let me just do this. Okay, so assume the burden by this. Our assumption is this. Assumption is, let's just say the supply is relatively price, maybe say elastic, versus demand is relatively price inelastic. Okay, so that is the assumption. Now, so with this as an assumption, I'll then draw the diagram. Okay, so basically what we have over here is this. Okay, price, quantity. All right, so supply is relatively price elastic, right? So that's where we have to actually draw a supply curve that's relatively gentle. Okay, relatively gentle. Okay, so basically let's make it like gentle like this. Okay, then we have like a demand that's relatively price inelastic, so we have to have it like a relatively steep. So something like this. Okay, it's relatively steeper. Now the original or initial equilibrium, price and quantity, is that where demand intersects with supply curve. So this is our QE, equilibrium quantity, and equilibrium price, PE. All right. Now, when there is actually a imposition of tax, okay, same thing, it will have actually caused the supply curve to shift leftwards. Okay. Where of course, again, the divergence between S and S1 gives us the tax per unit. And the reason why I've drawn it to be parallel is because we have to assume that it is a specific tax. Okay, specific tax where it is a fixed amount of tax per unit of the good, as opposed to ad valorem, it will be a pivotal shift. Okay, example of ad valorem tax will be like a GST. Okay, but in this case, we're assuming that it's a specific tax. Okay, so using the same analysis as earlier, okay, in our earlier diagram, you notice that with the imposition of tax, right, it will have actually bring us to a new equilibrium, which is at where demand curve intersects with S1. So this will have caused the quantity transacted to decrease from QE to Q1. Okay. Now, the price will have actually increased from PE to P1. Okay, which of course meant that the consumers will now have to pay a much higher price of P1 as opposed to before they pay the price of PE. Okay. Now, the vertical distance here remains to be the tax per unit, okay, of the good. And so we have this. I mean, you can label it as P naught, doesn't matter. I'll just label it as PS, okay? Now, so looking at the amount of tax revenue to the government, okay, same thing, tax per unit, okay, which is the divergence between S and S1. And because Q1 is the quantity transacted now, so based on Q1 quantity transacted and the tax per unit, okay, as given by the divergence between S and S1, this rectangle here gives us the tax revenue to the government. Okay, so this is the tax revenue to the government, okay, which is the same as what we did earlier on. But now we're looking at basically the tax burden to the consumers and producers respectively. And you can see that there's a difference, okay? There's a difference like what? Like the increase in price is actually substantial from PE to P1, okay? So in other words, right, the consumers will now have to bear a larger burden of the tax, okay? So this is the tax burden on the consumers, okay? And of course, for the producer, right, they also pay the tax. But the thing is that the burden on them is like much smaller, okay? So why is that the case? It's got to do with the price elasticity of demand and supply, of course. Okay, so the thing is, we can summarize it this way, okay? Why is it that there's a difference in the amount of tax that's actually borne by the consumers versus the consumers respectively? Okay, in this case, okay, consumers, okay, actually bear a larger burden of the tax. Okay, or consumers has a larger tax burden. That's fine as well. Depends on how you phrase it. It's the same. So consumers bear a larger burden of the tax compared to the producers. Okay, because demand is relatively price inelastic. Meaning that the consumers are the ones who are not likely to change their, you can call it their buying pattern or their buying habits significantly. Okay, there's not going to be a significant change, okay, in their buying habits, okay, as opposed to if you talk about like producers where the supply is relatively price elastic, which basically makes them more responsive to price changes. Understand? So if let's say they are responsive to price changes, means they are very responsive to changing their selling pattern. Understand? Okay, so consumers are not likely to change their buying pattern significantly. So this is how it would have actually just meant that, okay, so hence consumers bear more tax since the price, also in a sense, since the rise in price due to tax, okay, leads or led to a less than proportionate fall in quantity demanded. Okay, that makes them not so responsive to changes in or rather, yeah, changes in the, I mean, even despite the increase in the price, okay, but their response is actually less than proportionate. Okay, so because of that, you know, they are likely to actually bear a greater portion of the tax, okay, as compared to the uh sellers, okay, or producers who are responsive, okay, towards any price changes and therefore likely to respond more significantly as compared to the consumers. Got it? Okay. Okay. Changes in producer and consumer surplus. Okay. After tax. Okay. So this is what I'm gonna show. All right. Okay. So before that, maybe what I can do is this. Okay. So we say that tax is actually a form of distortion. Okay, to the free market, how it interferes with the operation of a free market, but yet it is not that destabilizing because it still enables the market to clear. What do I mean by allow the market to clear? Okay, if okay, let's just do this. I'll just explain things to you. Okay, supply, demand. So in other words, when we leave it to the free market, right? Okay, let's just talk about the situation before a tax. You know that, okay, this is our equilibrium price and of course our equilibrium quantity. And then what happens is that you can actually see this or perceive this as, I mean, in a way, you can actually see this as like your MC, right? Like it's like the marginal cost curve or marginal cost because it basically shows the additional cost that's incurred in producing an additional unit of the good in a way. Okay, or you can think of this demand as the marginal benefit that represents the additional benefit to the consumer, okay, when they consume an additional unit of the good. Understand? Okay, so you can see supply and demand this way as well. So why do I want you to see it this way? It's because I want you to be able to see that when left to the free market, right, the equilibrium output, QE, okay, is of course derived at where supply equates demand. And of course, when left to the free market, okay, in other words, where supply intersects with demand, it also gives us MB equals MC. Okay, where marginal benefit equates marginal cost. So you can think of it as it is the same as MPB equates MPC. Okay, if you actually relate that to market failure, MPB equals to MPC. So assuming there's no externalities, you know, basically there's no market failure, we'll say that when MB equates MC, it's supposed to lead to what we call allocative efficiency. Okay, it's supposed to lead to allocative efficiency, where we say that there is an efficient allocation of resources. Okay, efficient allocation of resources. So what is the result of this allocative efficiency? A result of being able to allocate resources efficiently, meaning to say that the goods that the society wants are being produced and in the correct quantity, no more, no less. Okay, that's what is meant by allocative efficiency. So the effect of allocative efficiency, right, is that it will have actually helped to maximize, okay, societal, societal welfare. Okay, that is what it's supposed to achieve, okay, under allocative efficiency. Okay, so the thing is that or maybe I should say, can I say societal welfare? Or maybe maximum, okay, in a sense, if let's say there isn't any market failure, of course it will be societal welfare, all right? Okay, or if not, you can say maximization of private benefit. Okay, where of course private benefit, okay, assuming, this is assuming no market failure, yeah? No market failure. Okay, I have to assume no market failure. So you maximize societal benefit is the same as you maximize private benefit. And this occurs when you can say that consumer surplus, okay, and producer surplus is maximized. Okay, consumer and producer surplus is maximized. Okay, so let me show you, okay, the consumer and producer surplus, the area, okay, graphically. So based on this quantity, which is QE, okay, when left to the free market, QE of this quantity transacted, what is the consumer surplus? Okay, and of course, what is consumer surplus? Right, consumer surplus is the difference between, okay, let me just take this down so that you can review it on your own as well, in case you're not so familiar with that and you can make a reference. Okay, consumer surplus, okay, is actually the difference between what consumers are willing and able to pay and, okay, and what they actually pay. Okay, so this is consumer surplus, all right? Now, as opposed to if you talk about like producer surplus. Okay, producer surplus is the difference, okay, between what producers receive, okay, what producers received for payment, okay, from the consumers, okay, and what they are willing and able to produce. Okay, so in other words, right, okay, for consumers, right, difference between what consumers are willing and able to pay. So what actually tells us, you know, which area actually tells us what they're willing and able to pay. What the consumers are willing and able to pay, right, is actually shown by the area under the demand curve. I'll just write this down. Area under the demand curve. Okay, so area under the demand curve and what they actually pay, which is of course the price times quantity. Okay, price times quantity. And how about, oh dear, wait, sorry. And what about this difference between what producers receive for payment and what they're willing and able to produce? Let me just type this out, then I'll show it to you graphically, all right? So what the producers are willing and able to produce is actually shown by the area, okay, under the supply curve. Okay, because you know that by definition, right, demand basically refers to what consumers are willing and able to pay, and supply, of course, relates to what the producers are willing or even prepared to produce. All right, okay. So graphically, I'm gonna just show you consumer surplus. Okay, so consumer surplus, right? Okay, is yeah, what consumers are willing and able to pay, which is area under the demand curve. Okay, which of course for this quantity QE, okay, what they are willing and able to pay is actually shown by this trapezium. Not too sure whether, okay, shown by this trapezium. Is that okay? Okay, it's actually this area here. Okay, then less of, okay, what they actually pay, which is PE times QE. So this is actually what they actually pay. Got it? I can draw a smaller one over here because then after that I'll combine it together. Okay, in case you need it. Okay, so, oh dear, wait. Okay, give me a minute, yeah? Let me just erase this one here. Okay, okay, let me just put this in for consumers. Okay, so this is my price and my quantity, supply and demand. Okay, so this is the equilibrium price and quantity. Okay, now this is what the consumers are willing and able to pay. Okay, which is the area under the demand curve. Okay, so this is actually a replicate of this one here, but I'm just trying to show you from the consumer's perspective. Okay, what would it be? How do we derive at the consumer surplus? Okay, so this is what they are willing and able to pay. So for this quantity, okay, area under demand curve, this is what they are willing and able to pay. Okay, less of what they actually pay. So PE times Q is what they actually pay. Okay, so consumer surplus is the difference between, okay, what they actually pay, which is the green trapezium, less of what they actually pay, which is the orange square. Okay, so what is left over, okay, is this green area here. Okay, so this is the consumer surplus. Got it? Okay, that's the reason why this area here, okay, is the consumer surplus. Is this clear? Okay. Everyone's fine?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Madeline, Shannon?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now, let's talk about the producer. Okay, producer. Okay, so we have like, okay, same thing, demand, supply, price, and quantity. Okay, so equilibrium price and quantity. And of course, from the consumers, or rather from the producer's perspective, okay, this is what they receive. Okay, the producers receive as their revenue because it's price times quantity for this quantity transacted. Okay, so what they receive, okay, less of what they're able to produce, which is shown by the area under the supply curve. So this area here, the triangle that's below supply curve, okay, for this quantity here is actually what they are willing and able to produce. Okay, so with the square, okay, which is the purple area, less of the yellow area, what you have over here is the um, producer surplus. Okay, producer surplus. All right, so this is our PS. Yeah, okay. Now, what's gonna happen is that I'm just going to, let me just save this, okay. What I'm gonna do is that I'm just gonna incorporate, okay, the taxes, okay, onto this diagram, and then let's see how the consumer and producer surplus actually change. And you notice something that at QE, right, there's really a maximization of, in a sense, societal welfare or private benefit, whereby consumer surplus, okay, and producer surplus is actually maximized. Okay, there's no other output, okay, that can be produced that would actually obtain or achieve this result. Okay, so that's the reason why we say that at QE, there's allocative efficiency. All right, now let's look at the imposition of a tax. Okay, which again we have actually shifted the supply curve leftwards from S to S1. Okay, and of course, assuming that this is a specific tax, so this is a tax per unit of the good. Okay, so with this imposition of the tax, they actually shifted the supply curve leftwards from S to S1. Okay, so this will have actually brought us to a new equilibrium quantity of Q1, okay, meaning to say that the effect of the tax is to reduce the quantity transacted from QE to Q1, and of course, causing the price, okay, paid by the consumer to increase from PE to P1, okay. And now, what happens is that, okay, we know that there will be changes in consumer and producer surplus, but just so how exactly it will change, and will there actually be any deadweight loss? Okay, so this is something that we'll see. Okay, something that we'll see and we'll examine over here. Okay, so the effect of the tax, as what we mentioned, is to increase the price right from P to P1. So you can see that this will actually have the effect of like reducing the consumer surplus. Okay, why? It's because for this quantity transacted now, which is at Q1, okay, what do you see? At Q1, right, okay, I mean, if you use the same analysis as what we did earlier on, based on this quantity of OQ1, okay, what the consumers are willing and able to pay is this, is the area under the demand curve. Okay, which you notice, right, has become smaller. Okay, so this is the area. All right, but the thing is that the price that they pay is, of course, higher now, which is at P1. So this is what they pay, right? Okay, this rectangle here is what they pay. So in other words, right, the consumer surplus has been reduced to this area here. Okay, so this one is the new consumer surplus. Understand? Is this okay?
Yeah.
Okay, Xuening is okay. Madeline?
Yeah.
Okay, very nice. All right, so now what happens to the producer surplus? Okay, now what happens is that if you were to look at from the producer's perspective, okay, basically, or rather before that, maybe what I can do is that, okay, never mind. Okay, so this is the producer surplus. Okay, this is the producer surplus. Now, because quantity has been reduced to Q1, right? So what happens is that what they can actually receive, okay, has become or has been reduced to PS. Because even though they are charging the consumers at the price of P1, but they are just collecting, yes, the P1, okay, but then what they actually get to keep is only PS. Okay, what they get to keep is only PS because, right, the difference between P1 and PS is the tax. So this amount, okay, is what would have actually, okay, been paid to the government in the form of tax revenue. Okay, as what we did earlier on, remember? Okay, so this is the tax revenue to the government. Okay, agree? Okay, so this is the tax revenue to the government, right? Then, of course, what the producers can keep, okay, is only going to be like, okay, what they receive actually, which is a PS, okay, PS times Q1, this is what they receive, okay, minus off what they are willing and able to produce, which is the area under the supply curve, this trapezium here. Okay, this trapezium here. All right. So, right, in other words, okay, in other words, the new producer surplus, okay, is this area here. Okay, so this is the new producer surplus. Okay, can you see that? So if you do a comparison, okay, if you do a comparison, like before the imposition of tax, consumer surplus was this green area or green triangle here, okay, when quantity transacted was at QE, right? But now, okay, following the imposition of tax, it has the effect of reducing the quantity transacted from QE to Q1. Okay, so this actually has the effect of like reducing the consumer surplus to this area here, a smaller triangle. In other words, right, consumers actually lost this trapezium area, okay, of consumer surplus. Make sense? Okay, but not all is lost. Okay, not all is lost because out of this there's lost, okay, out of this much of consumer surplus that's lost, this portion here, okay, this rectangle here goes to the government in the form of tax revenue. Understand? Okay,
Yeah.
all right, so what is actually lost, right, to the consumer, okay, is actually this shaded area here. Okay, what is lost to the consumer is actually this area here. And it's not say loss to consumers, but it is the loss in consumer surplus, but this is the actual loss to the society. Okay, so this is actually the maybe I should say loss of consumer surplus that is not distributed to any sector. Okay, what do I mean by not distributed to any sector? Meaning to say, right, it's actually lost for good. Okay, so that it becomes a deadweight loss. Because although, right, we said that this trapezium here is actually lost by the consumer, but at least this part here gets distributed to the government. So that it's not entirely lost, right? But this part here is actually not distributed to anyone, any sector, all right? So this is where it is lost for good. Understand? Okay. Now, producer. So prior to the tax, we saw that the purple area here is the producer surplus, all right? Then after the tax, right, the producer surplus decreased to the blue area here, okay, to the blue area here. So the loss in producer surplus is actually this purple trapezium here. Okay, it is the purple trapezium here. All right. Now, we also know that out of this that is lost, not entirely is lost. Okay, because out of this trapezium, this rectangle here, okay, forms part of the government's tax revenue. Okay, form part of the tax revenue. So basically, again, okay, we say that this area here is not distributed to any party. So basically, this is the loss of producer surplus that is not distributed, okay, to any sector. So in other words, it's lost for good. Okay, it's lost for good. So basically, our deadweight loss will be a combination of these two areas that's lost for good. Okay, that's lost for good. Okay, so in other words, this is what we call the deadweight loss. Understand? Girls, are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Yes.
Could you explain the triangle part, like the light blue color?
Oh, the light blue, is it? Okay, sure, Madeline. Okay, sure. All right. So let me just do this again, yeah. Okay, so we say that okay, what is the original producer surplus? The original producer surplus is the purple area here. Okay. But now, because what happens is that there is a decrease in the quantity transacted from QE to Q1 after the imposition of the tax. So what happens is that it will actually have the effect of reducing the producer surplus. So what is the new producer surplus? Okay, you can think of it as, because the tax has the effect of reducing the amount that's received by the producer, which is PS. Okay, why is it that the amount received by producer is now PS? Because even though the producers are charging a price of P1, okay, do they actually get to keep P1? They don't. Because out of this P1 times Q1 that they receive, right, okay, from the consumers for this Q1 quantity of goods sold, okay, this area here, the pink one, goes to the government, okay, in the form of taxes. So what the producers get to keep is only PS, okay, this one here, this vertical distance, okay. So this is what they receive ultimately in a way, okay. Then you can see that less of what the producers are willing and able to produce, which is the area under the supply curve, okay, the original supply curve, okay. So the rectangle minus the trapezium will give us this light blue area, which is the new producer surplus. Okay, is this fine?
Yeah.
Very good. All right. Is there any question that you guys want to ask me regarding taxes? No? Is it all okay? Okay, subsidies. Still under applications of price theory, yeah? Okay, so what is subsidies? Okay, you can think of it this way, like subsidies is of course the opposite of taxes, where of course, well, it is actually some form of like a payment, okay, made by the government again, okay, that does not, I mean, payment made by the government to who? It can be to any parties, okay, to any parties, which can be like specifically can be consumers or producers, okay, yeah, or basically just households, okay, in general, okay, where no goods and services are exchanged in return, or that it doesn't involve any production of goods. Okay, so it's basically just a form of transfer payment, okay, where money is just being given, but there is no transaction, okay, and that the government doesn't get anything in return. Okay, so that's what taxes is. Oh, sorry, that's what subsidies are. Okay, then of course, subsidies, they can be in many forms. It can be like in the form of like a cash. It can be like in the form of like what do you call that, tax relief. Okay, it's a source of form of subsidies. Okay, so the thing is this, we're just gonna look at like okay, the what do you call it, okay, so examples can be like cash grants. Okay, cash grants, so that is what we'll be looking at, okay, for our example, for our diagrammatical illustration. Then of course we look at the reason for why, okay, reasons for subsidies. Okay, so what's the rationale for that? Okay, so we say that, well, intention usually is to mainly, but not most of the time. Okay, it could be to increase the total revenue of the producers. Then you may ask, why? What's the reason for wanting to like, increase the total revenue of the producers? Isn't that going to like harm the consumers? Well, not really, because later we'll see how subsidies actually has the effect of lowering the price of the goods paid by the consumers. So it's actually a good thing. But the thing is this, why? Why does the government want to increase the total revenue of producers? Okay, you can think of it this way. Well, possibly, okay, the government aims to maybe say a narrow income gap, okay, between, let's say, between say rural earners versus urban earners. Okay, what do I mean by that? Rural as in it can be farmers, okay, farmers, well, working on the farm, okay, and basically that's where the government wants to increase, their earnings, and therefore they actually provide subsidies. Versus urban earners, generally they command a higher wage, and so they have higher income. So that's how it would have actually led to like, of course, widening income gap between the rural earners and the urban earners. And if the government's objective is to narrow the income gap, okay, so that explains possibly why they want to increase the total revenue of the producers. Okay, yeah. Okay, so some other reasons, okay, would be that because later we'll see subsidies has the effect of reducing the price of the good. So the one of the reason would be to actually reduce the price of goods, okay, to make them affordable, especially to low income consumers. So that is when we talk about in the case of necessities. Okay, so this is what happens usually. Okay, so that's why you see like in countries like Malaysia, for instance, okay, by subsidizing petrol, subsidizing oil, diesel. Okay, diesel. So why they want to make it affordable to the low income consumers? But the thing is that isn't necessarily a good thing. Not exactly, because even the high income consumers get to benefit from the lower diesel prices. Okay, yeah. And of course, some other reasons could be like maybe, okay, it's actually back to a little back to market failure, which is where we say how it actually helps to encourage the consumption of say merit goods, for instance, okay, to achieve more efficient allocation of resources. Okay, since merit goods tend to be under consumed due to the presence of positive externalities. Okay, all right. So this can be one other reason. And of course, we can talk about, okay, the exports, probably I don't want to talk about exports for now, because you will cover that only in the macro. Okay, So possibly this could be some of the reasons. Okay. All right. So this okay, this is basically the reason for subsidies. And now I'm going to move on to the diagrammatical illustration. Okay, for subsidies. All right. Okay. All right. I'll clear now. Okay. Effects of subsidies on consumers and producers, or it can even be on the society at large lah. So we'll take a look at that. Okay. Okay. Now, okay. So when we talk about like effects of subsidies, okay, say price, and we have our like quantity, and of course, let's just say that this is our original, okay, supply and demand curve. Okay, so supply intersects with demand, and that's how we have the equilibrium quantity and the equilibrium price, PE. All right. Now, so what happens is that it works a little differently now because subsidies has the effect of reducing the so-called cost of production of the producers. Okay, in that the producers are actually now going to receive, in a sense, more. Okay, so it actually has the effect of like shifting the supply curve rightwards, thereby increasing their willingness to supply. Okay, so you can think of it as the same thing again. Okay, the vertical distance or the divergence being the subsidy per unit. Okay, this is the subsidy per unit. Subsidy per unit of output. Okay, all right. So with the grant, okay, with the cash grants, for instance, okay, so this would have actually helped to increase the quantity transacted from QE to Q1. Okay, but it works a little differently from taxes. Why? It's because what we're going to do is that we're going to just, yes, establish our new equilibrium price at P1. Okay, which you can see already is very obvious that the consumers used to pay PE for the good, okay, but now they are paying like a lower price of P1. So a very direct effect, okay, or a positive effect of subsidy is that it will have actually how to reduce the price that the consumers need to pay, and of course it will have also increased the quantity transacted for the good. So it sounds good, isn't it? It sounds good. Okay, so now of course, what is it that the producers are receiving? Is actually PS. Okay, what they are receiving is actually PS. And this is what will have actually, in a sense, incentivized them to produce more. All right, okay. Now, so what we're going to do now is that we're going to see who gets what. Okay, who gets what? And of course, ultimately, I'm going to look at like how would it affect, again, consumer producer surplus, okay, and generally the society. All right, and is there any like a deadweight loss, or is there a gain, or whatsoever thing it is? So we'll basically be looking at that. Okay, now, so when we talk about like uh subsidy, okay, per unit, okay, of the good. And of course, this is ultimately the quantity transacted, Q1. So basically, with the subsidy per unit multiplied by the amount that's transacted, which is Q1, okay, you can actually see that this area here, the orange area, okay, rectangle, is actually the government's expenditure. Okay, the government's expenditure in terms of like how much the government has to pay, okay, for the subsidy, okay, as in the government's cost of subsidy. Okay, so this is the area here, okay, but who gets what? Okay, who gets what? Because ultimately Q1 is actually what is being transacted in the market, and that it is a fact that the consumers actually pay a lower price now, okay, of P1. Okay, so what happens is that for or rather out of this much of subsidy, okay, that's actually paid by the government or incurred by the government, okay, basically this much goes to the consumers. Okay, which is reflected in terms of a lower price. Okay, so that is basically the consumer's share of the subsidy. Okay, this is what the consumers enjoy. It's simply because of the subsidy they actually made the good cheaper. So this can be seen as how the consumers would actually, yes, gain, okay, gain from the subsidy. So that's why this green rectangle here is actually the consumer's share of the subsidy given by the government. Okay, then of course, this area here, okay, is the producer's share of the subsidy. Okay, all right. So it's actually reflected in terms of like how much more they're actually able to collect, they're able to make. Okay, so in a sense, this actually also incentivizes them to produce more. So this is what would have been, allotted to the producers. Got it? Okay, this is fine. This is okay, right? Okay, this is fine, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, very good. Okay, now, so what we're gonna look at basically the effect, okay, the effect of subsidies on the various stakeholders, which we have seen already that consumers are actually better off because of the fall in price and the increase in the quantity transacted. Okay, then the producers are also going to be better off. Okay, so how better off are they? I'm just going to show it to you on this diagram. Okay, so what happens is this, as you can see, okay, producers, right, prior to the imposition of of subsidies, what they get to generate, let me just do this. Okay, so this was actually the producers' initial total revenue. Agree? Oops. Oops. Okay, so this one here. Okay, so this brown area here. So this is the producers initial total revenue, P times Q. Okay, PE times QE. Okay, so this is the producer's initial total revenue prior to the subsidy. But now, right, what happens is that because the producers are receiving how much? They're receiving PS, okay, and they're selling Q1. All right, so this actually has the effect of raising their total revenue to PS times Q1, which is this whole area here. Got it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay, Shani's okay, right?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. And so how about the government? Of course, I mean, so in this case, the producers actually benefit from an increase in total revenue, all right? And it serves the purpose, which is what we said, okay, the intention could be to help the producers. Now, the effect on the government is actually negative, okay, and why is it negative is, of course, because the government has to bear, okay, this much, which is the orange area, right, of expenses, okay, which is, of course, in the form of a subsidy expenditure, subsidy spending. So because of the fact that there is going to be like a burden, okay, burden on the government. Okay, so what's going to do? What I'm going to do is this. I'll just type this out. Okay, so the effects, right, is that it will have actually benefited the consumers. Okay, consumers benefited benefited from lower prices and higher quantity. Okay, and then of course producers, okay, gain an increase in total revenue. Okay, so that's beneficial for them as well. Then when you talk about the government, okay, government is worse off because of the subsidy spending, okay, which may strain their budget. Okay, it may strain their budget. And sometimes we even say that may also incur, okay, opportunity costs. Okay, why? It's because if the government were to actually spend on giving subsidies, okay, like in this case, this money will have to be diverted away from other users. Okay, like how the government could have actually used this money, okay, to maybe say build infrastructures or to actually spend on like maybe say education. Well, we do not know what good is this, but for instance, okay, if let's say this is healthcare, then the government could have spent the money on education. Okay, right? So it depends on what we're looking at. So it may also incur opportunity costs where spending has to be reduced from other aspects. Okay, then you have to elaborate. Or maybe say such as, I mean, it can be healthcare, depending on what good you're talking about. Okay, so there's op costs. Okay, but of course, because of the increase in the amount transacted from QE to Q1, okay, it will have actually, in a sense, also be beneficial in terms of how there will be jobs creation. Okay, since production of goods increased, or since since production of goods increased from QE to Q1. Okay, got it? Yeah. Okay, so the thing is this, is the society better off or worse off? Is that we'll say that, well, generally they're still going to be like worse off. Okay, why do we say that? It's because, right, I'm going to show you now, okay, like where would actually be the deadweight loss, okay, that results from these subsidies, okay, that results from the subsidy. Okay, with that, right, let me just draw it on another diagram. Okay, I'll show you the deadweight loss. Is this okay so far? This is okay, right?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. I'll show you the deadweight loss in a separate diagram. Okay. Effects on consumer and producer surplus. Okay, surplus due to subsidy. Okay. All right. So now I'll just draw this diagram. Okay. Price, quantity, be it whatever good you're talking about. Okay. So okay, this is my demand and my supply curve. And so initial equilibrium, same thing, okay, PE and QE, okay? Now, what happens is this, that when we talk about like subsidy, right, okay, which actually has the effect of shifting the supply curve rightwards. But before that, let us just look at the consumer and producer surplus, the initial one, okay? So the initial consumer surplus, again, okay, as what I've shown you earlier on, right, in the previous slide, is where, okay, if we talk about this quantity transacted, okay, QE, initial quantity transacted. So it's the difference between what consumers are willing and able to pay, which is area under the demand curve, okay, less of what they actually pay, which is PE times QE. Okay, so this is the initial consumer surplus. Okay, so this is the initial consumer surplus. All right, okay. Now I'm going to show you the producer surplus, okay, which based on this quantity transacted, of course, initially, okay, this is what the producers receive, PE times QE, less of what they are willing and able to supply, which is the area under the supply curve. Okay, so with the square, okay, somewhat square, okay, less of the triangle, okay, what we have is this as the initial producers, right? Okay, now let's talk about the imposition or the subsidy grant. Okay, the subsidy grant. So this would have actually increased the supply, and of course causing the supply curve to shift rightwards from S to S1. Okay, Now, the thing is this, our new equilibrium point, as what you have seen earlier on, is at Q1. Okay, so the quantity transacted has increased and the price paid by the consumer has also decreased. Okay, but the thing is that it will have actually increased the amount received by the producers, okay, which is at PS. Okay, now let us analyze what happens to the consumer and the producer surplus. Okay, now you can see that let's analyze the consumers first. Okay, analyze the consumers. I'll just use back the same. Maybe should I use back the, okay. Okay. I think I can lah. Okay lah. In order not to confuse, okay, never mind. Okay, I'll just use a different color. Okay. Now, this is the initial consumer surplus. But because now the quantity transacted has increased to Q1, okay, and of course the goods now are being transacted at the lower price P1, okay, so we do the same analysis to derive at the consumer surplus. So at this quantity here, right, what the consumers are willing and able to pay is the area under the demand curve, okay, at Q1. So it's this whole big trapezium over here, okay? This is what they're willing and able to pay. Got it? And of course, less of what they actually pay, okay, which is P1 times Q1. Okay, so it's this rectangle here that they actually pay. So at this purple area here, okay, this purple area here will be what we call the new consumer surplus. Got it? Okay, new consumer surplus. All right. Okay, nice. Now, so what happens is this, from the producer's perspective, it's because they are also selling more now. Okay, how much more? Of course, from QE increase to Q1. So what they actually receive, as what we mentioned, is PS. Okay, they receive PS, right, for this quantity Q1. So basically, what they receive, which is PS times Q1, which is this bigger area here, could be a square rectangle, you call it, okay, less of what they are willing and able to produce, which is the area under the supply curve for Q1 quantity. Okay, for Q1 quantity. Area under supply curve S for quantity Q1. Okay, so you have this big area here, less of the area under the supply curve. Okay, so what you get is this area as the new producer surplus. Got it? Okay, yeah. So you can see, it's I hope it's clear to you that if let's say you were to compare the initial consumer surplus, which the initial is the orange triangle, and the new one is actually the purple triangle, you'll see that there is an increase in consumer surplus that's given by the shaded area. Let me just change a different color. Okay, so this area here, okay, this shaded area here is the increase in consumer surplus. Understand? Are you girls okay?
Yeah.
Okay, Shaning's okay also, right? Okay, good. Now, the producer surplus, right? Okay, you can see it's a comparison of the green area and the darker green area. Okay, so initially, right, the producer surplus is the light green, but now it has actually increased to the dark green, which is a bigger area. Okay, bigger triangle. Okay, bigger triangle. So, right, okay, using a different color, okay, or rather the increase in producer surplus would have been this area here, this trapezium. Okay, got it? So this brown area is the increase in producer surplus when we compare the initial producer surplus and the new producer surplus. All right. Okay, so you can see that the so-called gain in consumer and producer surplus is this weird looking area here, right? Okay, it's a weird looking area here. Okay, yeah. Okay, but not forgetting, okay, girls, not forgetting that, you know, the government's, okay, the government's subsidy, okay, government subsidy is given by what? This red area. Agree? Government subsidy is given by this red area here. So this is a cost. The cost of subsidy to the government. All right. Okay. So you can see that increase in producer surplus and increase in consumer surplus, right? This is a gain. Okay, this is a gain. So I'll just put this as increase in producer surplus and the increase in producer surplus, it is a gain to the society overall. In a sense, it's a gain, overall gain. But the cost of subsidy to the government is like a cost. That the cost brought to the society. Okay? So you can see that since the cost is actually greater than the gain, which is this weird looking area here, therefore, where's the deadweight loss? Can see? It's very obvious, right? The part that is not shaded, right? Do you agree with me, girls? Okay, agree? So this part here, okay, this part here is the deadweight loss. Okay, this part here is the deadweight loss. Okay, from subsidy. Okay, so this part here is the deadweight loss.
Can
Yes.
I ask?
Yes,
Like
Melanie.
the cost of subsidy is the it's like when you shift the supply curve to the right, then the red rectangle is the increase in the producer surplus and consumer surplus.
Oh, okay.
Is like
Okay, so the thing is this, okay? Basically, this you can see this as okay. This part here, right? This vertical distance here is actually the subsidy per unit. So if this vertical distance is subsidy per unit, multiplied by the quantity transacted, which is Q1. So that's why this whole red area here is the government's cost to the government for actually implementing the subsidy. But then the producer surplus, right? Okay, the gain in producer surplus is actually the comparison of the old or the initial producer surplus, which is the light green, okay, versus the darker green. Okay, this is the light green, and this is the darker green. So there is an increase, yeah, there's an increase in producer surplus of this much. But because this is the producer gain in producer surplus, but this is the gain in consumer surplus. Although these two areas, right, these two trapeziums are the gains, but the thing is that because there is a cost, overall cost of the red area, so the cost is greater than the gain.
oh, okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's why overall there's a deadweight loss. Okay, yeah. Okay, nice. So that's basically what we are talking about. Okay, when we talk about the deadweight loss. Okay, that's fine. That's fine, right? Okay. But then of course for 宣宁 okay lah 宣宁 I mean it may not be that precise as to like you know how you need to know this area and stuff like that, but then the thing is that this will be helpful in the sense that at least you know that this will be the deadweight loss, right? Okay, yeah. Okay, So now what we'll do is that we'll move on to what do you call that? We'll move on to the price controls. Is it okay? It's okay, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to that. Okay, so let's clear the drawing. Is there any question for Shanning? Is there anything you want to ask Shanning?
Not now.
Okay, all right. Okay. Okay, so now when we talk about like another form of intervention by the government, okay, we can have what we call a price ceiling. Okay, so price ceiling, you may ask like, how different, I mean, of course, this is under price controls, which we have two types of price controls actually. Maybe what I should do is this, price controls. Okay, we have two types. We have price ceilings, which is sometimes what we call a maximum price, okay, also known as maximum price. And then we have another, which is what we call the price floor, okay, also known as minimum. Okay, now, so when we talk about like a price ceiling, okay, what is the intention of a price ceiling? Okay, and what exactly is a price ceiling? Okay, so price ceiling, you can think of it as like it is a legal, okay, legal price or legal maximum price, okay, that is set below the market equilibrium price. Okay, it's actually set below the market equilibrium price. In other words, right, it actually has the intention of lowering the price. Okay, so why would the government want to lower the price? Okay, so what is the purpose? Aim. Aim usually would be to like possibly, I mean most of the time, to make the goods more affordable to the consumers. Okay, same thing, especially the lower income individuals or lower income households. Okay, yeah, and then of course, yeah, but it's not so much on the producers now, okay, but more from the consumer's perspective. Okay, so that is usually the primary aim. And so there are some instances that you can see in reality that would actually that would actually involve like a price ceiling. So sometimes it can be like in the form of like a rent controls, or sometimes it can be like in the form of like what do you call that, maybe say yeah, price ceiling that's imposed on maybe say on necessities such as maybe say rice, like in developing countries especially. Okay, developing countries especially. Okay, all right. So okay, now what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to like draw the diagram. Okay, draw the diagram for like price ceiling. Okay, then from there you can see the effect. Okay. Okay, so price and our quantity over here, and then what we have is our price ceiling. But before that, let's talk about the market equilibrium, where we have like a supply and demand, and of course intersecting what we have is the equilibrium price and quantity. Okay, now, so what happens is that we have, I mean, why would the government intervene with a price ceiling? It's because the government deemed this price, this equilibrium market price, PE, as possibly being too high. Okay, and of course, government wants to basically make this good, which is a necessity, possibly to the consumers at a much lower price. Okay, to ensure affordability. Okay, so with that, they actually impose a price ceiling. Okay, which must be below the market equilibrium price. Okay, so I can. Now, what's the effect of this price ceiling? Is that very obvious? You will have seen that the price actually decreased from PE to P max. Okay, from PE to P max, and of course at P max, of course you can see that this is like a good thing, for the consumers. Like the price actually came down. But what is bad is that based on this new quantity not new quantity, but rather based on this new price, P max, when you actually look at the corresponding demand and supply curve, what you see is that the corresponding demand is at QD, whereas the corresponding supply, okay, you dot it over, touch the supply curve, the corresponding supply is at QS. So in other words, right, the effect of the price ceiling, right, is that there would have been what we call a shortage. Agree? So this part here, okay, where the quantity demanded is actually greater than the quantity supplied, okay, actually results in a shortage. Okay, so as what you have seen, right, in the case of like taxes and subsidies, the effect of price control such as price ceiling is quite different. Quite different in the sense that for taxes and subsidies, right, it would have actually led to a new equilibrium. A new equilibrium whereby, yes, it's still like, quantity demanded equates quantity supplied. There's no shortage, no surplus, the market clears. Okay, the market clears. So the market is also seen in a sense as like efficient. But the thing is that when you look at this price controls, like price link in this case, it actually causes a shortage. So there is what we call market disequilibrium, okay, where the market doesn't actually clear on its own. So this is where we say that it interferes with what we call price rationing. Okay, the fact is that the price ceiling actually interferes with price rationing. Okay, what do we mean by that? When do you have to ration the good? You have to ration the good when we talk about there being a shortage, right? And usually when you leave it to the free market where it can operate on its own by the forces of demand and supply, basically, if let's say there's a shortage due to increase in demand, let's say, okay, the price will be driven up. Correct or not? Okay, when you leave it to free market in usual circumstances, the price will be driven up if let's say there's increased demand, okay, due to a shortage. Then this increase in price would have actually, in a sense, rationed the good to whoever is willing and able to pay the higher price, and therefore reach an equilibrium. Okay, reach a new equilibrium of a higher price and of course, a new higher quantity transacted. But the thing is that when you have a price ceiling, it interferes with the price rationing process, whereby it doesn't actually allows the market to clear. In fact, it causes a shortage. Okay, so in this case, we wouldn't say that it's an efficient allocation of resources. Okay, it isn't. All right. Then, of course, like in the case of like taxes and subsidies, it may not also be it may or may not be efficient, but the thing is that at least the market clears, right? Okay. Now, what happens is looking at the effects, right? That when there's a shortage, it could actually lead to the emergence of a black market. Okay, it could lead to the emergence of a black market. Where of course black market is illegal. Okay, it's illegal because what or how it works is this, that at this Pmax price, right? Okay, there's only going to be QS quantity of goods made available, okay, in the market to be sold. So what happens is those consumers, okay, who are able to buy the good, who are able to get the good, this limited supply of the good, okay, would actually buy these goods and pay a price of Pmax, okay, but the thing is that they could possibly resell, okay, the good at a higher price in the market. How high is high? They could possibly charge a price based on the corresponding demand curve, which would have given rise to what we call, let's say, PB, which is the black market price. Okay, which is illegal. Of course, it's illegal. Okay, right? So sometimes we call it underground markets or black market is the same thing. Okay, so that's what we're trying to say. Okay, then you may ask, of course, how exactly is it that there's actually how do they ration this good? Then, well, there's no way that they can actually ration this good, as what I was telling you. Then who determines who get this QS quantity of goods? Well, it can actually be like maybe say on a first come first serve basis. Okay, it can be on the first come first serve basis. So let me just type this out. Okay, so we call it non-price rationing Okay, non-price rationing, which is basically it doesn't go according to the price mechanism, because like what we mentioned, it interferes with the price mechanism in terms of how price signals is used to ration the good to consumers who are willing and able to pay. So non-price rationing method, okay, would probably involve things like possibly first come, first serve. Okay, first come, first served. All right, so whoever is in the line, okay, queuing up first will get the good. Or if not, then they can actually be what do you call that? Well, favoritism. Okay, favoritism. The seller could possibly sell the good to whoever, okay, they favor. Okay, so this is basically quite different from what we say when it actually comes to like price rationing. Okay, yeah. Is everything fine so far?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. Okay, so the thing is this, we now, Shani is okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now let's look at the effects on, as in effects as in meaning like the deadweight loss or the welfare loss from the transaction. Okay, from this transaction being like what happens after the price ceiling. Okay, is that it would have actually caused, as what we have seen. Okay, in this case, it would have caused. Oops. Okay, as you have seen, right, the quantity transacted has fallen from QE to QS. Okay, so this is the fall in or under consumption. Okay, that arises from this price ceiling. Okay, under consumption. So this is the under consumption. Okay, so for this under consumption, right? Okay, what is the resultant welfare loss? Okay, so from what we have seen, right? You can say, okay, you can say the deadweight loss is actually going to be this area here. Okay, so why is it this area? You can think of it as, well, this shaded area here is actually seen as the loss of consumer surplus, okay, due to the fall in the consumption of the good. Because previously, right, what happens is that they actually, the consumers actually, have a consumer surplus that is this bigger, triangle over here. Okay, although the price of the good has actually decreased, okay, but we can see how is it that it will have actually overall led to consumers, okay, in a sense being worse off due to this loss of consumer surplus. Okay, and of course from the producer's perspective, right, okay, they will have actually lost this area here. Okay, so this is the loss of producer surplus. You can view it that way. Okay, so that in totality, right, this would have been the deadweight loss. Okay, deadweight loss that arises from the price ceiling. Okay, that arises from the price ceiling. Is this fine? Okay, so if let's say you want a simpler explanation, okay, as to like what could have led to this deadweight loss, okay, without looking at like a consumer surplus, producer surplus, you can also think of it as this. Because of this quantity, this extent of underconsumption, okay, there would have been what we call a loss of satisfaction, okay, as given by the area under the demand curve. Okay, so this trapezium, okay, which I can draw it out for you, okay, for simplicity. So this area here, you can think of it as the loss of consumer satisfaction. Okay, so this is like a loss because this quantity of goods are not being consumed. But there's also a gain to the society. So the gain to the society is actually given by, say, what do you call it? This area here, which is the area under the supply curve, because resources do not have to be allocated to the production of QE. So this is like the gain to the society. Okay, gain. But because the loss, which is the brown area, is greater than the gain, okay, from under consuming, under production, and hence under consumption of the good. Okay, so therefore the overall deadweight loss is the black triangle. Got it? Okay, clear? Is this fine?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. So now let me just what do you call that? Yeah. Okay, so is there any like impact on the workers? Yes. Workers are likely to be worse off because now the quantity sold, okay, has decreased. Let me just put it down, okay? So how will this affect different stakeholders? Oh no. I don't have space, I realize. Okay, never mind. I'll just put it over here. No. Okay, wait. Okay, so effects on stakeholders. I mean, other than the consumers and producers, right? Okay, is that okay? So never mind. For consumers, we know that the price has decreased. Okay, but then the thing is that quantity transacted decreased. So consumers are somewhat, in a sense, okay, worse off. Okay, so consumers worse off due to lower quantity consumed at QS. Okay, QS. All right. Then, of course, workers are retrenched. Okay, due to lower quantity produced. Okay. Then, if you talk about like a government, there's not going to be any like impact on them because of the fact that there's no subsidy, no money they have to pay, or the thing is that they don't receive anything from this price ceiling as well. So there's no effect. Okay, all right. So producers are actually worse off because of the fact that they experience a fall in their total revenue, which is pretty obvious because, okay, where is the fall in total revenue? I can show it to you guys over here. The initial total revenue for the producer, right, is actually at where PE, okay, multiplies QE, which is this area here. This is the original total revenue, okay, received by the producers. But the thing is that now, okay, but now, with the fact that this price ceiling actually puts a limit as to how much they can charge the consumers, so price fell to P max and the quantity transacted fell to QS. So this area here is the new total revenue. Okay, so you can see that the total revenue has, of course, decreased from this bigger area PE times QE to P max times QS. Okay, got it? All right, so this is actually how the producers are worse off. Clear? That's okay, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Any question that you guys want to ask?
not really.
Not really, yeah. Okay, so let's talk about like some context. Okay, let me save this. Okay, let's talk about rent control. That's where we learn more about the applications. Because just now I was talking more about like food, okay, food control. So that may not actually be very ideal because you know that it ultimately does not solve the problem, right? Okay, so applications. Applications of price ceilings. So that's where we talk about like specifically in the case of like maybe say rent controls. Okay, so the thing is this, when we talk about like even in developed countries, okay, like UK, they can actually be like rent controls imposed where the government actually ensures that the rent doesn't, of course, go beyond a certain level because of the fact that the market rental or the market rental rates is actually deemed to be too high. And that's where the government wants to ensure that, oh, everyone has a place to stay. Okay, so they want to ensure that the rent is made affordable. Then you may ask, how about the buying their own property? The thing is this, if you talk about, I mean, it depends on the culture of the country. Like in UK, there are a lot of people who actually rent houses. They don't actually buy. So this is where we say that that basically explains why there's a need for government intervention in the form of like a rent controls, okay, which is a form of like price ceiling, okay. And let's see what happens. okay, when there's actually such a rent controls imposed. Okay, so we say that it is actually good, of course. So aim of the government, okay, aim of government intervention, okay, in the form of rent controls, okay, is to make rented properties like rooms or houses, okay, affordable to maybe to individuals, okay. And I would say that this is especially in countries where renting properties is a norm, especially in countries where renting is a norm. Okay, of course there are people who buy houses, but they may not have the means to buy it. Okay, so that's the thing. Now what is the effects? Okay, the effects, the consequences or effects lah. Okay, effects of rent controls. Okay, the effect of rent controls is that well, definitely the positive effect is that the rent would be more affordable to the consumers, okay, which of course especially the low income individuals. And that is a good thing. Why is that so? It's a good thing because you can, I mean, why does the government want to make rent more affordable to the consumers? It's because this helps these consumers, okay, to allocate their what to call that, their income to other spending or other goods and services which could increase their you'll learn later next time, material standard of living. It means it makes them better off instead of having to pay high rents and basically deny them the ability to actually spend on other goods. But now that the rent is actually made more affordable, it increases their ability, their purchasing power to buy other goods. This house is going to raise, yeah, to allocate. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Okay. Now, and of course, the bad thing, okay, the bad thing is that it will have actually caused a shortage, okay, of housing, okay, because the landlords, okay, the landlords may not be willing, okay, to rent out their properties, okay, since the yield or what we call the return from rental is lower, okay. In extreme cases, right, it may even prompt the homeowners homeowners to what we call to sell off the property. Okay, because if government continues to put the limit as to how much the landlords can actually collect, okay, from renting their property, okay, it may prompt the homeowners to sell off the property, right, to actually make capital gains. To make capital gains, capital gains means like what they stand to gain if they were to actually, of course, sell the house, because based on the market value of the house compared to what they initially pay to get the house, they make the difference, and this difference is the capital gains. Okay, so if this is going to happen, then this will worsen the shortage. This worsens the shortage, okay, of properties put up for rent, or rather worsens the shortage of properties. Oh no, because the number of properties put up for rent, put up for rent decreases. Okay, it would have decreased. So that's why it would have actually aggravated the shortage problem. So that's not exactly helping to solve the situation. And of course, we say there could be maybe say a long waiting list. Okay, long waiting list. Okay, for tenants waiting to secure a property. to rent. Okay, so that is actually not a very good thing, because what happens is that where do they stay, right? Meanwhile, okay, so that is actually a problem as well. Where to house them? Okay, then of course, it may actually lead to what do you call that? What do you call that? Tenants may sublet, okay, the units at rents that's above the legal maximum price. Legal maximum price. Okay, which is actually an underground market. That means it's an illegal market. You know, sublet means what? Example, right? It's like well, basically tenants, okay, the one who rented the property, right? They may actually be renting, okay, re-rent the property out, okay, to other tenants, to other parties at a price that's higher than what they are being charged.